must be weak after what you've endured. Let us venture outside and select your dinner.
Sorry, Abe. After-death experiences always turn my stomach. I ain't hungry.
This will be a weird one. Strap in. This past month I have been on a sort of vampire binge. I played Vampire the Masquerade, rewatched Underworld, Blade, all that 2000s bloodsucker goofiness. Because of that, I decided to also try a game I never heard much about. And I discovered the reason. BloodNet came out in the early 90s, aiming to mix vampires and cyberpunk into one game. While it is able to deliver that, it did in one of the worst ways it possibly could. Set in 2094 Manhattan, the world is separated into physical space and cyberspace. Everything is controlled by a company called Transtack, which created the cyberspace and regulates access to it. Only those registered with the company are allowed to enter, in theory. As in any cyberpunk setting, there are those who serve cyberspace in illicit ways, in a quest for information freedom or just for the hell of it. The collective of groups that participate in this conflict are known as the Underground. Mixed in with this backdrop are vampires, including good old Dracula. Manhattan itself has become a husk, with the bulk of the movement of the world being done in cyberspace, both business and pleasure. All cities are in disrepair as the governments lose their power and Transtechnicals gains more influence over people's everyday lives. Not only that, but there are rumors of a vampire plague going around. It's mostly fear-mongering, since people see the violence they commit, but few have actually seen a vampire. This is a violent and dangerous city, so who knows what is killing who for sure. Your character is Ransom Stark, a freelancer who got rewarded for a job well done by being turned into one of these vampires. However, he was saved by his neural implant, and now has to find a cure for himself before the chip fries and he undergoes the full transformation, becoming a mindless minion. You're not a full vampire, but you need blood to stave your hunger, all the while fighting to keep your humanity. Gameplay occurs in both the real world and cyberspace, with your party moving from one to another. This game is a mixture of point-and-click movement with stat-based combat, so you can consider this an RPG as well, I guess. While quests aren't really marked for you to check on, Stark's contact list has tips on characters' whereabouts and possible leads to complete whatever job you're currently focusing on. There are a few side quests to do, and you can complete them in exchange for money, items, or new companions to join. When it comes to creating your character, you can either let the game do it for you, or answer 12 questions in order to get your character mostly done, with a few leftover points at the end. The first 4 questions determine your background as either a mercenary, scrounger, or cyberpunk/hacker. Then, you'll get 8 questions that distribute your points into skills depending on what you answer. There are more than 12 questions in total, so you might get a few different ones if you think about playing the game more than once. While I couldn't find for certain online what answers give what skills in each question, they are intuitive enough. If an answer talks about shooting people, it probably gives you point in firearms. Since you'll be facing so much combat anyway, I found it best to forego any skills not related to that. Your companions can fill in the blanks for lockpicking and hacking, but you'll always need to get your hands dirty in fights. Besides, there are a ton of skills like stealth or pickpocketing that are barely used, if at all, during the story. Doing it this way will avoid you having skill points in something useless, and Stark will not have his face become redder with each encounter. After answering all the questions, you get a few more points to put on whatever skill you want, and you can even change Stark's face portrait. I can't say no to his smile. Supposedly, your characters improve over time by using their skills, becoming better at them. I have no idea if that was properly implemented. It always felt like my skills were changing at random in certain points, and there never was a tangible difference anyway. Your party is represented by Stark Sprite walking in these 3D backgrounds, where you interact with items and try to figure out where to go next through different puzzles along the way. You're supposed to drag item icons into Stark Sprite to add it to the group's inventory. Sometimes that worked, but other times it was a bit of a hassle. To move, you simply point and click. Besides some areas containing multiple screens, you don't need to move in order to interact with the world. Stark can speak to people who are on the other side of the room, most likely shouting at each other, and use telekinesis to grab items. Just some of the perks of being a half vampire. That's good since walking is slow and sluggish. You have to be wary about Stark's bloodlust though. With time, his meter will increase and he may need to feed eventually, costing his humanity. This is a time limit in the game, making sure you don't walk around without a little bit of careful thought. If the time is up, that's game over, as Stark becomes a full-fledged vampire. If you have a high bloodlust, you get the added benefit of having an extremely loud noise whenever you open the drop-down menu. Being honest, Stark's vampirism was a non-issue throughout the game. There was no interesting mechanic tied to it, and aside from a couple of areas, no NPC cares that you're looking a bit more pale. In some areas, there are access points into cyberspace. This is a new space where you can walk into 4 directions to progress. In specific spots, you'll find semi-random encounters containing helpful tips, new quests, and more. While the concept for it is really neat, this idea felt underdeveloped. Aside from acquiring information to progress, there isn't a lot to do here. The random encounters aren't random at all, and after just a few visits, you'll be done with them for a long time. You use keywords learned during gameplay to enter certain wells, which function as specific user-created areas, and in those you may find a note or a journal log. Companions are found around Manhattan, either old friends of Stark or capable freelancers looking to get hired. While your friends usually come for free, the freelancers require upfront payment, but it's nothing outrageous. Money in this game is never a problem. You get a lot of it, and there's not enough ways to spend it. Your companions help during combat, and outside of it they can be of use thanks to their skills. You can easily get a well-rounded party since there aren't that many useful skills to worry about. Sometimes they'll chip in with a comment about the current task you're undergoing. Maybe a useful tip here and there, or banter between each other. If you expect this game's combat to be good despite all the jankiness already present, you'll be disappointed. There's no in-game tutorial, so you'd better look for the manual for help or get ready to be frustrated. Combat happens in the same background screen you were before it started. You can either use quick combat or descriptive combat. Quick combat instantly makes you lose. Don't use it. Descriptive combat lets you position your characters in place before battle starts. Only Stark has a different sprite. All your companions look the same. You don't need to put all your companions in combat, which can be helpful when you have squishy party members who specialize in other tasks or who are too valuable to the story. But you'll need to retreat them at the start of combat to do so. There's a general retreat button that doesn't really cost anything, so whenever you face a random encounter you don't like, you can click that and reload a previous save to either reroll the enemies or possibly escape the encounter altogether. Just know that it can take a while to get no encounter at all if you're escaping combat. Do yourself a favor and turn off combat sounds. You have to turn it back on every time you end it if you're playing with voice acting enabled, but it will save your ears in the long term. This game isn't worth hearing loss. After everyone's ready, you can choose to attack a specific body part on a target, reposition your characters, use items, bite their necks if the character is a vampire, change weapons, or try to escape. There is an option for vampires to exert their will on others, but it never worked for me, and I don't think it was a skill issue. After selecting their orders, combat happens and you get a descriptive log on what happened, who missed, and who hit their target for how much damage. Combat ends when all enemies or Stark is dead. There's not a lot of depth to it, and depending on how you go through the story, you can never fight anyone besides bosses if you want. You might want to do that. Combat is so slow and unrewarding that you only lose when participating in it. It doesn't feel worth it at all. The game's crafting mechanic, or jury rigging, requires you to have items in your inventory and sometimes plans for the final product. You can make weapons, armor, and some items of use, including drugs. You can also disassemble some items for their components. Aside from a few necessary progression items, this is not worth it. There's a chance for your jury rigging to fail and you lose some of the items used, and any weapon you make this way has a probability of jamming during combat, leaving you to change your weapon or whack the weapon to try and make it work again. Whacking can also make the weapon explode in the character's hand. None of the drugs you can make are that worth it of it either. They're cheap to buy, and it's not like you need any of them except for quests. Already at the start of the game, the font used during the intro cinematic is bad. I'm usually very lenient when it comes to weird fonts, but whenever there's something dripping, I have a hard time reading it. Aside from that, the intro shows well how the graphics for the rest of the game are going to be. Manhattan has a lot of semi-3D environments to walk on. You can explore a lot, in classic point-and-click fashion, but even for that the interaction is limited. Whatever item you can interact with is grayed out in a small square. The people in these screens only stay in one place, sometimes pretending to be performing some type of action but always static in their spot, except for cutscenes. They're not really inhabiting the space they're on. It's more like ants walking over an oil painting. These aren't the most beautiful backgrounds you'll ever see, but they do the job. They look a bit blurry, either a limitation of the times or an artistic choice. Either way, it works well. Since the world is in such a disarray, the streets are dirty and depressing and people's workshops are filled with tools and wires on the ground for their cyberspace projects. There are exceptions though, places maintained for actual human transit and stay. Character sprites are really simple. Most of the time you can't even see their faces, so you need to use the interact button to know who you're talking with if you don't already know. They didn't have the budget or talent to attempt FMV, but it's clear that they wanted to, at least in the first stages of development. Cyberspace is just filled with 3D stock models from the 90s spinning around. They didn't even have to animate anything. Very clever. The character portraits do look nice, and it's clear that they had fun making them. If you're looking for a portrait for your Shadowrun campaign, there are some good ones here. The drop-down menu is how you interact with most of the world. Even if I got used to them, it still felt clunky to access inventory or enter cyberspace with it. Even saving was an ordeal. I did like the art they used though. It felt stylized in a good way. What I didn't like is the inventory menu. You get to see 4 items at a time in each character's inventory and need to scroll page by page to find what you want. If you're collecting parts to jury rig items, your inventory will become a mess real quick. It also has a horrible circuit board background that's all grey. The music for this game is one of its letdowns. It either feels flat and uninteresting, or like a mess of instruments all playing at the same time. They attempted a more minimalist and moody soundtrack, and they failed. Aside from that, the entire soundtrack is very short. There is only about 20 minutes worth of tracks. The only track I found to be interesting enough was the one for character creation. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Voice acting is bad. There are two versions of this game. One with voice acting and another with text boxes for dialogue. As far as I know, there's no way to have both at the same time. There's a lot of popping from the audio recordings, mixed in with static. I could barely hear some characters, especially if they had a stronger accent. The VAs were not the best quality-wise either. They were either people from the office or amateurs. Unfortunately, this game is mostly forgotten through time, so there isn't a lot of info online on the people who worked on this. Maybe it's for the best. I talked about the loud noise when you have high bloodlust, and the sounds guns make in combat. But there are a few other instances where you'll be surprised by the sounds of heaven descending for the apocalypse as well. If you got interested in this game enough to play it, I hope you come back to your senses. Besides that, I'll start to spoil the story now, so you can go to here if you want to avoid any spoilers. Time to chip in, deckhead. While standing around in a bar called The Abyss, Stark is approached by a woman named Melissa. She has a job for him, asking that he enters Transtack, wanting some records of her and her father's dealings wiped off the company's servers, or the guy in charge convinced that they're not worth investigating. After getting the job done, Stark goes into their penthouse, hoping to get his cash and maybe score something with Melissa by using his unmatched charisma. She asks about the chip in his head, and here's where we get some light exposition. This is an old game, so they assume you read the manual before playing it. That's where you find more about Stark's past. Once a low-paid employee of Transtack who had to work through cyberspace, he contracted what is called Hopkins-Bree ontology syndrome, or HOPBREE for short. People with this syndrome can't distinguish between the real world and cyberspace, mixing the two in their minds. Fired from his position, Stark wandered aimlessly through the streets until being found by a local street gang and taken to a local clandestine workshop. Here, a woman named Deirdre Tackett installed a neural implant in Stark's head, which helped him regain his senses of reality. With this new chance at life, he became a freelancer of renown in the city. Melissa's dad enters the room, Abraham Van Helsing. As much as this game tries to be completely serious, it does throw some corn on your face.
Yes!
He reveals to Stark that he unknowingly gave Tackett's address to him, and that he has been searching for her for a while now. He bites Stark, and through a shockingly long slideshow, we see his transformation into a vampire.
I will be but one step from attaining power over Manhattan, cyberspace, and beyond. I shall control the Earth's computers. I shall have power without limit.
Jesus. Stark resists his control and punches the old man. Going through the subway, Stark arrives at Hackett's laboratory, ransacked and vandalized with graffiti specially targeting our protagonist. It seems our neuroship is capable of speech, and he, or it, tells us that it's responsible for keeping the vampiric transformation at bay. He can't do it forever though, so we need to find a way to reverse this, before it's too late. The lab has a few items, most important being the neuroimplant plans. This is where we enter cyberspace for the first time. I wish the internet was this cool. That little humanoid thing spinning is our soul box, the representation of our thoughts or who we are. I don't really understand it. It represents Stark in this virtual space, and that's what matters most. When moving through the different screens, we will sometimes find random encounters. In this one, someone warns us about a hacker named Zeus. We will see him soon. By using these file access system modules, we can traverse to different wells in cyberspace. Hackett's well has the code HOPE, but we can't enter due to our lack of decking skill. Stark will need to find some help. Thankfully, he is a well-connected guy. His contact list has a ton of leads on where to find old friends and capable freelancers to hire. Looking at the map of Manhattan, I decided to go with the Houston Matrix Rovers first, a group of old-school cyberpunks. Their leader offers Stark a safe place to jack in, and help with any troubling code we may find. Besides a leader and old friend, the rest of the group just makes small talk. Since a lot of freelancers stay at the Abyss, that's the next stop. There are a ton of colorful characters here.
Do you see my hands? These hands strangle God's enemies. These hands crush the throat of the Socialist Party candidate for mayor of Chicago. These hands broke the neck of the Bolshevik, leading a strike against the St. Louis corn syrup cartel.
Among the elite, Stark has a few old friends. Rima Fizz is an amazing decker and shooter, and we promise to find her partner for a mission as well. Monique St. Clair is an old flame of Stark's, and an amazing shooter at that. When she sees his ghostly figure, all grudges seem to be put on hold, and she volunteers right away. Lash Givens is one of the few friends our protagonist has in this town, and another easy addition to the team. This is our lineup for now. We will get more soon. Back with the Rovers, time to get into Hackett's well with our friends. All we find is a bit of her journal. It talks about how she has been fighting vampires for a long while now. How long we don't know. There's a group called the Red Cross's Knights that are experts when it comes to killing vampires, but are a bit technologically behind nowadays. Van Helsing has been looking for Hackett because of an icebreaker called Incubus, a universal key to the entire internet. Exactly what he needs to eradicate the underground and control the global net. Hackett's aides, the Lost Kids, sacrifice their bodies in order to migrate their minds to cyberspace. Take the Incubus and hide it deep within the Matrix. Lastly, she gives the location of an engineer who might be of help. I have a feeling that all of this sounds cooler than it's going to be when we see it. Jacking out or jacking off? Cyberspace, we go to the cafe nearby. It's filled with university revolutionaries, recreational drug users, poets, and linguists. Sometimes, they are multiples of these things at once. There's a cryptic hacker here that may help us with his skills, but we can't understand anything he's spouting. It's hard to understand most of the people here. One guy speaks in 3 languages at once, and gives us a note to decipher so that we may find that hacker in cyberspace. We need to give the note written in 3 languages to the guy who can only speak in crossword puzzles, and then you need to decipher all of this gibberish. Did you get all that? It's going to be on the test, and I'm not going to repeat myself. The only word that matters is the final one, giving us the code for a well we need to go, named Now. Before entering this well, we find a user named Drek, another of Stark's contacts. He's really popular. He tells us about all the cyber sex he's having with his cyber girlfriends.
So the girls never meet me, and maybe when they do, it doesn't always work out. But hey, by then I've got a good chance of getting some virtual sex out of the deal.
Unless you're too fat for the virtual suit.
Since he owes us money, he hands us a security drone virus instead. Maybe it'll be handy in the near future. Entering the address code, we get caught into a logic puzzle involving the names of gangs around Manhattan. Some we met, others not yet. Again, we only need to look at the last phrase given to crack it. Use the cryptic crossword puzzle tip we got, or look it up online. You get in and find a hidden file called Babel Code. With that, we master all the languages needed to read that note. It contains the word median to talk to that hacker from the cafe. His name is Cyro, and sensing our vampirism, he says that he needs a material object belonging to whoever is at the root of this difficulty to help against it. So, he needs something from Van Helsing? Probably. In cyberspace, we also met a guy named Elvis, who talks like Elvis, but has lost his physical form after merging his mind with his program to evade Transtack. If we can find a cyborg's body for him, he promises to help us. From the cafe, we go into an alleyway to meet with the Doom pilots. If you feel like Stark is just wandering around talking to random people, you're right, it feels like that. This gang used to be freelancers, but got caught in the idea that making money off the net, controlled by the corporations they're against, is hypocrisy, even if they are stealing from them and selling to others. Now they're freedom fighters. There's nothing here but a side quest that's not interesting. But we need to talk to them to learn that entering Transtack is not going to be an easy task. I feel like that was a bit obvious. Nearby is Dr. Ludwig Sampson, the cyber engineer mentioned by Tackett. Although now he seems to be a cyber geneticist, maybe these are interchangeable in this world. Even if initially apprehensive, he offers his help, giving us his well code to read a file on how to cure ourselves. As soon as the party enters, the neurochip tells them that Stark is in danger. Sampson betrayed the party and tried to kill Stark while he was booted up. Van Helsing got to him first, and made him into a vampire. Sampson had a neurochip himself, but his time was up, and now he couldn't resist the commands given by his master, so we need to put him down. In his lab, there are a few cyborg parts, so we are closer on helping Elvis. The doctor wasn't lying about the document in his well though. Going back there, we find that to cure Stark, we'll need to kill Van Helsing and possess Incubus in cyberspace, while a holy person performs an exorcism. Well, that's good, but we still need to talk to some people. The Kafka Conspiracy are a group we were told to meet by the patrons at the Café Voltaire. They are another freedom group, but one that abstains from using violence.
Because really, who would notice one more murder in this city?
That's actually a good argument. Before they help us, their leader wants us to steal hardware from some media pirates to prove our worth, without killing anyone that is. They'll have someone watching. One of their members also tells us about a group called Electric Anarchy that is harboring one of the lost kids, so that's our next stop. That's also where Garrick, Rima's partner, is staying. While the kids get beaten up by the leader of the group, he'd rather stay than go with us, unless Stark brings proof that he's on the company's hit list for associating with Tackett. Weird kid. Garrick joins the team as soon as he sees his partner with us. Our party is ever growing. Since we need a holy person for our exorcism, a cathedral sounds like a good place to go next. But Mother Mary, the pastor, is doing charity work at the Central Park slums. Since this is one of the few places not filled by concrete, it's also called the Great Lawn. Before looking for Mary, there are other people here to talk to. The place's de facto mayor wants some fiber optic cables to get illegal access to cyberspace. In exchange, they'll give us access, and a few secrets. Don't forget to grab some dirt. We'll need it for the coming days. Sanders Tomalin is suffering from Hopri, and he doesn't have a neurochip to help him. In one of the few times Stark shows some real kindness, he gives the chip's plans to the man, expecting nothing in return. We get a lockpick database for it, a necessary item to complete the game. We find Mary and agree to meet behind her cathedral. Hopefully this isn't another ambush. We also bought a pin from this kid. The park's close to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, so we stop by there. It has been closed to the public, so that working class vandals can't vandalize the art. Now, the rich kids are the ones vandalizing it. They come to party every night there. In there, we get a few new locations to visit, and can sell the Babel code to a rich woman so that she can implant her baby with built-in translation software. She is such a nice mother, she carried it in her womb for 5 months before putting it in a tube. From here, we visited the hospital to see some comatose Deckers who flew too close to the truth before arriving back at the Café Voltaire. Lenora Major can give us high-level access to the TransTech systems by registering our essence to the security in exchange for $25,000. Next stop is the Autonomy Dogs gang, and they're racist, both the ethnically and cybernetic kind.
Let me see your face. You look ethnic to me. Where are your people from? What filthy mongrel coupling do you issue from?
Their leader got hurt by a Bolivian gang, and now he hates all races that aren't white, I guess. He also hates cyborgs, and wants us to destroy another gang called the Hard Metals, since they're all about cybernetic enhancements. We need to accept this quest in order to find them, and progress the story. It doesn't mean that we need to complete the assignment. It's easy to piss this guy off and have him become hostile, which means that a lot of people back in the day probably got soft-locked because they had a cyborg or Latino in their party. Timmy Goldfarb is also here, or Wild Child as he's called now. Another of Stark's contacts. He found some sort of morph code that messed with his mind. In his own way, he's able to give us access to the well where it's located. The Hard Metals give us the location of a top-of-the-line cybernetics merchant for $2,000. Without his location, we can acquire a few necessary items to progress with the story. We can now return to Mother Mary to learn how TransTech is trying to take over the cathedral with some shady dev that's completely within the law. She wants us to investigate the man sending these collection letters and his office in TransTech. Then, she'll come with us to help in reversing Stark's vampirism. We got an invitation for the Hellfire Club back at the museum, so we can go there to mingle with the elite of the city. This is where politicians and CEOs meet during most nights. One executive of TransTech gives us a security clearance pass to mess with the company from inside, just for the slight chance that we can kill Van Helsing and help his financial pursuits. We also meet a Rainfield here, who wants us to make him into a vampire. He gives us the address to his apartment and boats. In one of the rooms here, we find the entrance to the inner sanctum, where the elite of the elite gathers. Thanks to the lapel pin we bought from that kid back in Central Park, the guards open passage to the group. There's a bunch of people here pretending to be vampires. And there are also some actual vampires. Thankfully, they're not hostile to us. There are a bunch of bottles here filled with blood. Finally, Stark can satiate his bloodlust without having to lose humanity. One of the vampires here has half of a Chinese amulet she believes can cure her, but the other half is with someone who hangs around in the museum at night. Her partner doesn't really believe that this amulet is going to work. The leader of this coterie wants some new TransTech nanomachine technology that can replicate blood in the user system, foregoing the need to hunt the streets until the fear around vampires has diminished. Getting out, a journalist blackmails us, asking for a bottle of blood from the sanctum in order to not snitch to everyone about our current condition, so we give one to her. Since it's nighttime, we return to the museum to get the other half of that amulet. We also use some coveralls from earlier to steal a sarcophagus from the museum. This is our new bed. At Rainfields, we get a new servant, and he offers the apartment for us to make our lair. With some dirt from Central Park and the sarcophagus, Stark can rest in here now. This isn't very useful. He's a possible companion, but we're good with our current group. The Flux Riders are Stark's old gang, and they still are up to helping an old Conrad. The company seems to be tightening their security recently. The Strawberry Fields is where the Black Agates stay, a rage gang that likes causing chaos. Their leader, Shock Maraude, is the one to talk to if you want to be harassed by enemies until the end game. Van Helsing has a hit on Stark and is hiring this gang to do the job, but Shock doesn't know who the target is, yet. It'll take a few days. This opens up a quest to get the hit off you for one day more, and then you get attacked anyway. If you just don't talk to Shock, this never happens, and you have to worry less about random encounters. Finally, after all this time, we will enter Transact building. There isn't much to do in the lobby, but if you don't have a pass equipped, they'll kick you out. On the first lab up the elevator, we get a blood-producing nanotech. Also, you must open a door here using the electric lockpick we built to get the fiber optic cables for the Great Lawn. Aside from a few other side quests, the only room that matters now is the Chief of Security's office. If you recruit Garrick before talking to the leader of the Electric Anarchy, you're soft-locked as you don't get this location. After killing him, we get a ton of items for quest progression, but most importantly there's Tackett's essence and a list with dangers to the company to eliminate. Stark is on the list. Another name we find there is Laszlo Green, and since they have his address, we can go there now. He's a bit on the paranoid side of things, but considering how this world works, he has good reason. He will only talk to us after we give our insulation suit so that he's protected from outside radiation. He gave us access to another lab at Transtech, and their cyberspace code, which we can't access right now. While here, we collect a few items for later. The lab has a couple of scientists to talk with, but not much more. Even with a guide limiting my back and forth playing this game, it's definitely taking a toll on me and my enjoyment. I decided to finally go meet Zeus, that top hacker who challenged us. Turns out that the internet tough guy is a tough girl instead. Her friend is stuck in cyberspace, inside a data cage being drained by the company. Laszlo talked about this, saying that they're taking the essence from top deckers for some new product. Zeus' friend is named Banks, and we free him with a key we got in one of our cyberspace runs. We promised to meet him in his apartment. We passed by Central Park to give the optic cables we got, and then had to see Banks, who has been killed by Transtech security as soon as he woke up. Dealing with them, we get to look around the warehouse. Before dying, Banks gave an encrypted code to his well. Zeus said, all the N's are L's, while Banks told us that all M's are E's. Following these clues, we get this. Consider that VJE sequence. The most common three-letter word in English that ends with an E is the determiner the. So, considering this and eliminating all other letters we don't know, we can presume a few things. If the first word was to be eliminate, exchanging all the letters involved, we'd get this, which we can conclude to maybe be eliminate the masters. And that is the code for the well. There's a lot of logic and a bit of trial and error. This is one of the few puzzles in the game that actually feels satisfying to complete. Inside the well is a fragment of complex computer code. Stark can't figure this out by himself, neither can his companions. Ben Martinez, the leader of the Houston Matrix rovers, offered to take a look at any code we couldn't figure out ourselves at the start of the game, right? That's worth looking into. This could be a code from Notional Labs, the place from earlier, so time to go there when no one's around. At night, there's only one person in there, but he doesn't prevent us from searching and finding the essence that allows us to get into the well we acquired. We get the morph spawner and can now use morph codes to improve our stats. All the ones we can get are useless though. They only prove stats that do nothing. Since we have no use for it, we give the spawner to Laszlo. It has been a while since the Kafka conspirators asked us to steal a multi-channel transmitter from the Icon robbers, but better late than never. Stark puts on a gas mask and uses a sleeping gas we got from one of the Electric Anarchy people for a side quest. They're all still up, but it's just because the devs didn't want to implement sleeping sprites. Pick up the transmitter, but also a camera and 2 holofilm for another 2 quests. Going back to the hospital, thanks to the electronic lockpick, we can grab an antidepressant and syringe from a locked cabinet. It's not stealing if the doctor doesn't care that we do it. There are 2 places we can go and get instantly attacked for being a vampire. The cemetery and the Red Cross's Knights. There's nothing in the cemetery but a few useless items and some people who think they can hunt vampires. The Red Cross's Knights, however, are an essential visit. Tackett talked about the group holed up in the cloister building up north. In order to get in without being attacked, Stark needs to apply an insta-pigment, essentially mascara, to hide his pale skin. The Knights are professional LARPers, living as if they were in the 13th century. Christoph would be at home here if he was not a vampire himself. Some are believers of the Christian faith, while others are just in it for getting vengeance on vampires. They're a bit split. There are 2 leaders here, one spiritual and one military. Saint Sebastian can see through the makeup with his psionic powers and refuses to speak to a vampire, but the beads on his floor will help with that. Did you know this world has some type of magic? You wouldn't. It's mentioned during this questline and only this one. Sebastian is the one capable of blessing the soul blades, swords of pure energy that are tied to the wearer's soul and allows for it to purge vampires of their unlives. The other leader is Archibald Herschel, and he accepts us right away, telling Stark to go into the basement to grab a couple of free swords. The knight guarding them wants Stark to step into a mirror, so that's why we needed the camera. Take a photo of Stark and project it onto the mirror to fool the knight. He sees us doing all of this. We get 4 soul blades, but they are still not blessed. We take those beads I talked about to Cecil in the Café Voltaire. This is why we endured that whole crosswords puzzle at the start. Leave the beads next to his earthly body and get into his well to be blessed. This is another hidden timer. He'll take on the blunt of Stark's vampirism while we search for a way to cure ourselves still. This changes nothing to us gameplay wise. Cecil is the only other psionic we know about. With this, and the insta-pigment still applied, Saint Sebastian blesses the soul blades, and we can kill vampires with 1 hit now. The game says that these are supposed to be tied to a character's souls, and there's an used dialogue involving tying a soul blade to specific characters only, but that's not implemented. Anyone can use these at any time. These are great for vampire killing, and a while back we heard of vampires being the New York Public Library. There are 3 of them here. The leader in the back is Kate, the woman who sold that Chinese amulet to those people before. It was supposed to help against vampirism, but really, all she wanted was to attract vampires so she could become one herself. Eventually Van Helsing appeared and did just that. If they're Van Helsing's minions, they die. Just aim for their chest. There's also a book for another quest, which we deliver at the museum. Going to cyberspace, we find Melissa, the woman from the opening of the game. She contacts Stark hoping to meet in public. It's probably a trap, but we don't get a choice. Despite the options this game gives, it's very linear. At a place called Le Food. Yes, Melissa wants to help against her father. She says she has been transformed against her will and couldn't do anything because of his influence on her mind. She is a new companion, but it won't last. We go back into the Hellfire Club, take a picture of McAllister for a friend in Transtack, and go to the inner sanctum. A man named Alexander Temnant is there, and he is Van Helsing's banker. He is not a vampire though, and harbors no goodwill towards the man. We want to get rid of his employer. We need to go to Grant's tomb, near Van Helsing's penthouse, so we are going there next. Of course, the place has a couple of vampires and grunts to kill. In the room Stark woke up after his transformation lies a signal scrambler we need for the tomb. There's nowhere that tells us these, so we are just saving on time. It opens a wall on the tomb, leading to the burial chamber. The original owner is just to the side, and Van Helsing drops from the ceiling to deal with us. Melissa betrays us here, to no surprise, so we are one companion short for the fight. Funnily enough, you could dismiss Melissa at any time prior to this fight, and get rid of her for the entire game. It's one less enemy to deal with if you're having problems. After victory, we find Tackett's pendant on the ground, and Tennant crucified to the wall. Van Helsing still lives, doing that same separated heart trick from Vampire the Masquerade. So now we need to find his heart at Transtack and destroy it to truly defeat him. The last street gang we haven't met are Sid and Nancy. All male members are named Sid, and all females are Nancy. They're a group of retro punks inspired by the Sex Pistols, but aside from that, they do the same gangbanging the other gangs do. The only reason to meet them is to give a Sid some drugs to make him meet his brother, who is now a knight. With a breastplate found in Van Helsing's penthouse, we also get a new companion. He's pretty good at killing vampires, and that's the bulk of our enemies now. Welcome, Sir Ananias. Time to destroy Van Helsing for good. At Transtack, we first give Duggan that holofilm with his boss and a female friend. It's always good to help a guy go up in the corporate ladder. Also, he won't bother the cathedral anymore, so we can get married. The room where Van Helsing's heart is room 1122. It has a massive hologram of his heart, but the actual thing is very tiny on a table. It contains only one hit point. Although we were told to stake it, we can't. It doesn't take damage from melee. Just shoot it with any weapon you have. After killing it, Van Helsing goes down for good, and you just need to finish the rest of the enemies. A scientist who was a servant to the old vampire tells us to get ready, as he will help us get rid of our vampirism. Get Mother Mary to join us, and we go back to the Electric Anarchy. Remember Chuck? The last remaining lost boy from Tackett's? No you don't. We give that list we found a while back, and he joins us as well. The reason we didn't do this earlier is because the kid is useless in a fight, and he could have died if we weren't careful. According to him, Tackett's pendant is a fake, and we disassemble it to find an emerald looker chip. This is the only upgrade for the looker chip we find to put in our deck, and the only time we disassemble something. Accessing cyberspace, Tackett communicates with Chuck. He took away his memory of the code for the well where the incubus is, but now tells us. It's Kansas. We find all the lost kids in there, and according to them, Tackett is apparently alive. Finally, after all this time, we get the incubus. The Omni code for the net. Time to free Stark from his vampirism. I assume that we use the icebreaker on the vampire virus, like a computer virus, in order to allow Mary to do her thing. Shadowrun has a vampire virus. Is this one similar to that then? It doesn't really matter. The final well we need to access is Elizabeth. Surprisingly, we have character sprites here. It seems that Stark arrived at the deepest part of cyberspace, where reality can be shaped like no other. The master of this space is a dark-winged avatar.
Incubus, give me a hand here!
That is not within the parameters of my programming.
I didn't even know Incubus could talk. Dracula MF. So was that figure Dracula? Did vampirism start in cyberspace, or was cyberspace created as a reprieve for the Lord of Darkness? This place is interesting. Stark will have to fight solo here against a few key figures from this adventure, and some weird ones. I never recruited Nimrod 7, but he is here. Each enemy has a weapon and armor, and Incubus allow us to pick and choose what we want to use against them. It's essentially a rock, paper, scissors game, except we also have to count with Stark not missing 15 times in a row and dying. There are 6 enemies in total, and after 3, we can save before going to the next. You can try to escape, but Dracula won't allow it. This is to the death. There are so many characters in this game. Why would they choose a security captain we fought hours ago and one of the gang leaders for us to fight here? And why did it have to be the racist one? There are many other characters more important to the plot. Maybe even just Stark's friends. The developers clearly gave up after a while. Once we get to Dracula himself, he doesn't even have a unique combat sprite. He has one for the overworld, but maybe they couldn't animate him. Dracula dies in one hit. Fitting for this game. Decade is alive, Incubus is sentient somehow, and we have a tease for the next game that never happened. This was Mr. Bones was right, and I wanna get out now. For such a cool premise, they really missed the mark with this game. It clearly had some good ideas and sometimes they were implemented well, but I can't help leaving this game with a sore mark on my mind. There are many rookie mistakes for developers that supposedly were not rookies. Paragon Software had almost 20 games under their belt when they got bought out. Unfortunately, aside from a few magazine articles and interviews, it's hard to find much about this game. Maybe it's for the best. This is a broken mess of a game, and maybe it's good that I forgot about it. Some people have nostalgia for it, but I don't. So I can say that, even for the time, this was never a good game. Thank you for watching. This game was really taxing on my mental health, so I'm going to play some good games now. I might give a chance to their subsequent games eventually. The team bought back the studio from Microprose and gave up on the idea of an RPG, focusing on the adventure game part. Apparently, they learned some lessons. If you have something good for me, leave it in the comments. I really need it.